Donald Harvey was born in a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio on April 15, 1952. A little later, his family moved to the small town of Boonville, Kentucky, which is located in the Appalachian Mountains. His family did not have much wealth and lived in the remote mountains of eastern Kentucky. According to speculation, Harvey was abused by his uncle and neighbor when he was just 4 years old. Instead of playing on the playground at school, this intelligent boy preferred to spend time with adults. Although his teachers remembered him as a favorite, his classmates stayed away from him. Leaving school after 9th grade, Harvey still earned his diploma through distance learning. Without a job, he cared for his dying grandfather in a Kentucky hospital, which initiated his fixation on death. Visiting the hospital regularly, he was offered a position as an orderly and accepted the offer. He cared for the patients, providing them with medication and helping with their medical and personal needs. Feeling power over the helpless, he reinforced the order that ensured their survival. "Control and power are the same thing, aren't they?" he noted in a 2003 interview. "I believe that if you control something, you have the right to control it." Harvey committed his first murder on May 30, 1970. Shortly after starting work, he smothered his victim, who was suffering from a stroke, with a pillow. Subsequently, he used various methods such as disrupting the oxygen supply and even piercing patients with a metal hanger instead of a catheter. It can be estimated that he killed about 13 people. Since many of his victims were elderly or seriously ill, no one suspected him of the crimes. He noted that doctors were too busy to pay attention to suspicious behavior. It wasn't until the late 1980s that forensic pathologists finally determined that Donald Harvey was the killer. Most doctors were so overworked that the patient could have died, and the doctors didn't pay attention. They just pronounced death and sent the body to the morgue, he added. This practice left hundreds of patients at the mercy of the psychopath, who used various methods like cyanide, arsenic, and other poisons. He added them to food and drink, pressed them on the victims' necks, or let them suffocate from lack of oxygen. At the same time, Harvey struggled with depression and attempted suicide. His encounter with an undertaker named Vernon Midden opened him to new vistas of the occult and a deeper understanding of the human body. Harvey decided to embalm the living undertaker. As he continued the murders, he justified them as acts of mercy, killing those who were suffering. Shortly after his suicide attempt in 1971, he was arrested and fined. After another failed suicide attempt later that year, he was arrested for suspicion of breaking into his own house and accused himself of killing 15 patients at Marymount Hospital, but he was not believed. Once in the Air Force, Harvey was mustered out and attempted suicide for a third time. During this time, he delved into the occult and began relationships with many men. After poisoning one of his partners, a neighbor, and his father, Harvey continued to poison, strangle, and mutilate patients at various hospitals. This went on for decades until an accidental autopsy led him to be put on trial. Citizen John Powell was hospitalized after a motorcycle accident in March 1987. He later died, and an autopsy revealed cyanide. Powell did not die from injury in the accident, but from poisoning. As an EMT, Harvey became the prime suspect. Refusing a polygraph, he was sent for questioning, where he confessed to killing Powell. Although he only admitted to that murder, evidence pointed to his involvement in many other crimes at hospitals in the 2 states. For many years, this phenomenon occurred until a chance discovery led to the trial of the Angel of Death. Mr. John Powell was hospitalized after a collision with a motorcycle in early March 1987. He later passed away in the hospital. At the autopsy of Powell's abdomen, the doctor found cyanide. It became clear that Powell had not died from the motorcycle accident, but from poisoning. Harvey worked as an orderly, and the investigation soon turned to him. He refused a polygraph and was questioned, where he confessed to killing Powell. He claimed that he had committed it out of pity for Powell and his family. Although he did not confess to the other murders, the evidence showed that Harvey had worked as an orderly during multiple fatalities at 2 different hospitals. Police had enough evidence to charge Harvey with 37 murders. He pleaded guilty to killing 24 people and was sentenced to life in prison. A few months later, he pleaded guilty to 12 more murders and received an additional sentence. Harvey viewed his murders as a satisfying act of mercy. He was eventually convicted of 37 murders, but some reports say he committed 87 offenses. On March 30, 2017, Harvey died in prison from his injuries.